Did you know that some of the biggest potential collaborations between BTS and their fiercest global chart rivals almost happened only to collapse at the very last minute? What really stood in their way? Why did these multi-million-dollar projects suddenly disappear without a trace? Here's the untold story behind the massive collaborations that failed completely. Number 8. The Unwritten Promise, Shawn Mendes. The story of Shawn Mendes and BTS is one of the most famous what-ifs in the modern pop landscape, a tantalizing narrative of mutual admiration that ultimately got swallowed by the relentless machinery of global pop schedules. The public spark was ignited backstage at the 2017 American Music Awards, a definitive historical flashpoint where the Western music industry first truly collided with the unstoppable momentum of the South Korean group. Mendes was visually stunned by their presence, later stating in a video interview with digital creators that they were arguably the most beautiful people he had ever seen, while praising their explosive performance boundaries. The mutual respect was deeply verified. BTS members had consistently listed Mendes as an artist they genuinely admired and wished to work alongside during their early US media blitzes. By mid-2018, during an official broadcast on the Roz and Mocha show, Mendes explicitly went on the record to promise fans that a collaboration was actively in the pipeline, fighting back against skepticism by stating that the track would absolutely happen. He explained to the host that the primary roadblock was the sheer, suffocating density of their respective calendars, calling BTS a very hard group to get with due to their historic touring and production demands. He openly admitted that while they hadn't sat down in a physical room to lock in the exact lyrics yet, the intent was entirely real and concrete. Years rolled by, and while fans waited for a massive joint single featuring the full lineup, the original vision of a complete, face-to-face studio partnership slowly evaporated under the weight of solo eras, military enlistment timelines, and geographic distance. A small piece of this creative bridge was eventually salvaged when Mendes was credited as a co-writer on the track Hate You for Jungkook's 2023 solo album Golden. However, the grand dream of a physical, collaborative studio session between the Canadian pop star and the full septet remained entirely unfulfilled. Jungkook himself expressed bittersweet reflections during the album's promotional cycle, openly sharing his deep regret and disappointment that he never actually had the opportunity to meet Mendes or Ed Sheeran in person during the execution of the project, relying strictly on remote communication and producer video calls across time zones. It stands as a stark, factual reminder of how even the most passionate artistic promises can be completely derailed by the rigid, unyielding parameters of international pop stardom. Turn the page, because the next missed connection involves a rap superstar whose reason for dropping out will leave you completely speechless. Number 7. The Collision of Timelines, Cardi B. The intersection of Cardi B and BTS represents one of the most explosive, chart-dominating missed connections in modern music history, a case where a verified, top-tier hip-hop partnership was entirely derailed by the clinical and unforgiving realities of commercial release scheduling. The public foundation for this mutual appreciation was laid bare in late 2021 during an exclusive media interview with Variety, where the Grammy-winning rapper openly declared her deep, authentic admiration for the South Korean group, noting that the infatuation was a serious household affair driven heavily by her daughter, Culture. Cardi B explicitly went on the record to confirm the existence of a definitive, concrete plan, stating without hesitation that she was officially supposed to be featured on a record with them. The artistic synergy made absolute sense on paper, matching BTS's high-energy global pop structures with the sharp, aggressive, and undeniably charismatic verse delivery that defined Cardi's run at the absolute peak of the Western charts. However, the entire monumental project collapsed before it could reach a recording studio due to an intense, unyielding commercial conflict rooted directly in her own discography. Cardi B explained that the exact window of time proposed for the joint track clashed heavily with a major, high-priority record she had just unleashed independently to the market. The sudden intersection of these two massive musical rollouts created a dangerous logistical bottleneck where the promotional timelines would completely smash into one another, threatening to dilute the chart momentum, maximize marketing friction, and divide the focus of streaming audiences globally. Faced with the strict reality of music industry optics and the strategic demands of label executives, the collaborative record was ultimately shelved, leaving fans with only a tantalizing glimpse of what could have been a historic cross-cultural pop moment. Despite the severe professional setback, Cardi B maintained her fierce vocal support for the septet, later crossing paths with them directly in a highly publicized backstage meeting at the 2021 American Music Awards. It remains an undeniable, documentable fact that a generational hip-hop and K-pop crossover was actively structured behind closed doors, only to be entirely erased by the rigid, mathematical timing of commercial release calendars. Turn the page, because the next artist on this list involves an iconic American alternative pop pioneer whose planned vocal track was entirely cut, leaving a vacuum that completely changed the trajectory of a massive BTS title track. Number 6. The Phantom feature, Sia. The history of BTS's monumental 2020 studio album Map of the Soul, 7 contains one of the most enigmatic and deeply polarizing collaborative decisions in the modern pop era, and instances where a massive vocal addition from an explosive global powerhouse became a historic missed connection for the fanbase. The track in question was the high-stakes digital bonus version of the album's lead anthem, On, which officially featured the soaring, unmistakable vocals of Australian pop icon Sia. On paper, the pairing was an industry titan's dream, aligning BTS's thunderous, marching band-backed hip-hop production with Sia's legendary, arena-sized vocal delivery. The track was fully recorded, legally finalized, and released across major streaming networks globally on February 21, 2020, as a heavily promoted commercial focal point designed to maximize the group's Western radio penetration. However, despite the massive structural weight of the release, the collaboration completely evaporated from the physical and visual landscape of the album's historic promotional rollout. In a shocking strategic move that caught casual listeners off guard, Sia did not appear in either of the 2 high-budget official music videos produced for the track, neither the explosive, kinetic manifesto film nor the cinematic narrative video that shattered YouTube premiere records with millions of concurrent viewers. Furthermore, the collaborative version was completely bypassed for all major live television promotions, with BTS delivering their historic debut performance of On at Grand Central Terminal for The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon using exclusively their own original 7-member vocal arrangement. The complete physical absence of the pop icon from the performance cycle, combined with a total lack of joint studio footage or behind-the-scenes interaction, led to an intense critical reception where audiences felt the addition was a purely digital asset rather than an organic creative union. The true roadblock was the total separation of their creative environments. The song was executed entirely through remote audio files sent across continents without a single face-to-face studio session, resulting in a finished product that many fans felt lacked the deep, intertwined vocal chemistry seen in their work with Halsey or Coldplay. Over time, the featured version slowly receded into the background of the group's definitive discography, standing as a documentable fact of how an executive-level mega-collaboration can completely miss its mark when stripped of physical connection and visual synergy. Turn the page, because the next missed connection brings us to a legendary alternative rock frontman whose secret studio sessions with BTS were completely locked away in a vault, leaving a trail of unreleased gold. Number 5. The Lost Masterpiece, Troye Sivan. The narrative of Troye Sivan and BTS is a remarkable testament to how a highly anticipated, direct studio collaboration can be entirely rewritten and restricted by the complex structural politics of songwriting credits and independent album rollouts. The foundation of this creative connection began years prior, with BTS members, particularly Jimin and Jungkook, publicly declaring their deep admiration for Sivan's distinct, melancholy electronic pop production, even covering his trackfuls in an early bedroom studio recording that went viral across global fan networks. Sivan warmly acknowledged this appreciation in multiple Western radio interviews, consistently expressing a strong, authentic desire to sit down and write specifically for or with the South Korean powerhouse. The stars finally aligned in late 2019 during the intense, highly confidential production window for BTS's critically acclaimed album Map of the Soul, 7. Behind closed doors, Sivan, alongside his frequent writing partner Ali X and Canadian producer Bram Inscore, actively collaborated on a massive, emotional pop anthem intended to showcase a historic vocal intersection between Sivan and the vocal line of BTS. However, the dream of a true, joint duet where Sivan's signature airy vocals directly intertwined with the members' voices completely collapsed during the final executive mixing stages. Due to conflicting label priorities, management strategies, and the strict artistic vision for the album's thematic flow, Sivan's recorded vocal tracks were completely omitted from the final master. Instead of a soaring global duet, the song was completely retooled into a BTS-only track titled Louder Than Bombs, with Sivan's contribution being heavily restricted strictly to a background songwriting and composing credit. Sivan himself took to social media on February 16, 2020, to officially confirm the news, expressing immense pride in having co-written the track but subtly highlighting the bittersweet reality that he would not be heard on the actual record. The track went on to become a massive fan favorite B-side, revered for its dark, haunting production, yet it remains an undeniable historical fact that a true vocal partnership between the artists was completely severed, leaving the actual recorded duet version permanently locked away in the high-security archives of big hit music. Turn the page, because the next missed connection centers on an iconic American rock band whose frontman was directly in talks for a massive crossover, only for the entire project to vanish into thin air. Number 4. The Broken Bridge, Khalid. The intersection of BTS and American R&B breakout superstar Khalid stands as one of the most agonizingly close, fully confirmed, yet ultimately unfulfilled collaborations in the entire history of modern pop music. Unlike many speculative internet rumors, this specific partnership was an absolute, verifiable reality that was publicly and officially announced to the global media by the artists themselves. The public origin of this mutual respect dates back to the 2018 Billboard Music Awards, a massive industry event where Khalid and BTS spent significant time together backstage, a meeting that was heavily documented via social media photographs and video clips that sent shockwaves through both fan bases. The creative chemistry was instantaneous, rooted in a genuine, shared admiration for smooth vocal harmonies and contemporary R&B-infused pop production. By May 2019, during a highly publicized promotional interview with the prominent Los Angeles radio station 102.7 Keys FM, BTS leader RM directly went on the record to shock listeners by explicitly stating that a collaboration with Khalid was actively happening. RM left absolutely no room for doubt or ambiguity, confirming that a song had been mutually agreed upon and that fans could definitively look forward to an official joint release in the near future. Khalid completely reinforced this factual narrative during his own subsequent media appearances, passionately praising the group's unmatched work ethic, humility, and groundbreaking global cultural impact, while expressing immense excitement about blending his signature soulful, velvet vocal tones with the unique vocal colors of the South Korean septet. Behind the scenes, demo tracks were being actively discussed, and creative ideas were flying back and forth across the Pacific Ocean as both camps desperately tried to find a structural pocket to finalize the track. However, the entire monumental project slowly and completely ground to a halt as it collided head-on with a series of catastrophic global events and impenetrable corporate barriers. The primary devastating factor was the sudden, catastrophic arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020, which completely shattered the global music industry's operational framework, locked down international travel, and forced BTS to completely scrap their massive map of the Seoul World Tour in favor of an entirely different, stadium pop English trilogy consisting of Dynamite, Butter, and Permission to Dance. This massive, abrupt shift in creative direction and release strategy completely sidelined the more introspective, R&B-focused track they had been constructing with Khalid. Concurrently, both artists were facing immense, suffocating pressure from their respective management companies and record labels to capitalize on their individual, peak career streaming momentums, creating an unyielding logistical nightmare where aligning their fiercely guarded release windows became a mathematical impossibility. Years evaporated, and as BTS transitioned into their highly scheduled Chapter 2 solo eras and mandatory South Korean military enlistment cycles, the window of opportunity completely slammed shut. It remains a documentable, historic tragedy of the modern streaming era that a fully finalized, officially announced vocal alliance between the definitive group of K-pop and one of America's most celebrated R&B voices was completely starved of a release, leaving the master files frozen in time. Turn the page, because the next missed connection on this list involves an absolute icon of American alternative rock whose secret creative discussions with the group were completely buried under layers of corporate red tape. Number 3. The Lost Rock Revolution, Green Day. The historic intersection of the legendary American punk rock titans Green Day and the global South Korean powerhouse BTS represents one of the most stunning, genre-bending what-ifs in the entire history of modern stadium music. The secret framework for this earth-shattering crossover was quietly set in motion during the frantic, high-stakes final quarter of 2019, a period when both monumental acts were simultaneously preparing to launch massive, legacy-defining global stadium rollouts scheduled for the first half of 2020. Green Day was locked in to unleash their Raw Hella mega tour across continents alongside Fall Out Boy and Weezer, while BTS was aggressively preparing to completely conquer the planet with their monolithic Map of the Soul tour. Behind closed doors, high-level corporate discussions and creative producer networks began throwing back and forth a highly confidential proposal to completely break down the traditional walls between Western alternative rock and Eastern stadium pop. The blueprint was remarkably bold, an aggressive, high-octane stadium rock anthem that would fuse the raw, distorted guitar energy and driving percussion of Billy Joe Armstrong's legendary trio with the razor-sharp hip-hop cadences and anthemic vocal harmonies of the South Korean septet. Prominent industry insiders and tour personnel were actively looking at a dual promotional strategy where the two completely different musical worlds would intersect, creating a historic cross-cultural cultural moment designed to completely redefine what a modern global stadium anthem could sound like. However, the entire monumental project was completely and brutally pulverized before the artists could lock down a physical tracking studio by the sudden, catastrophic arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020. The global health crisis acted as a total wrecking ball, instantly freezing international travel corridors and forcing both camps into an immediate, high-pressure state of emergency. On exactly the same devastating timeline, both Green Day and BTS were legally forced to completely cancel or indefinitely postpone their massive, highly scheduled international stadium tour dates across Asia and Europe due to mounting public safety regulations. This sudden, total collapse of the live music industry completely shattered the logistical and strategic foundations of the planned crossover. Instead of moving forward with a high-energy, collaborative rock revolution, both acts were forced to completely retreat into independent, localized creative survival modes. BTS rapidly re-engineered their entire musical direction toward an uplifting, English-language pop trilogy to comfort a locked-down world, while Green Day completely shifted focus toward navigating their independent album cycles and delayed touring liabilities. By the time the global touring infrastructure finally began to slowly rebuild itself years later, the unique, high-stakes window of opportunity had completely evaporated, leaving the historic punk and pop alliance entirely starved of existence. It remains an undeniable, documentable tragedy of modern music logistics that a generational rock and pop fusion was completely erased by a global lockdown, leaving fans to only dream of the stadium-shaking energy that should have captured history. Turn the page, because the next missed connection brings us to a chart-topping pop icon whose planned vocal contribution was completely hijacked by intense legal battles and corporate blockades. Number 2. The corporate gridlock, Justin Bieber. The planned collaboration between Justin Bieber and BTS represents the ultimate executive-level missed connection in modern music history, an absolute Titan-class partnership that was fully verified behind closed doors but completely choked out by structural timing, health crises, and corporate reorganization. The foundation for this historical crossover was solidified in April 2021, following a massive, earth-shattering $1 billion corporate merger where BTS's parent company, HYBE Corporation, officially acquired Ithaca Holdings, the powerhouse management umbrella helmed by Scooter Braun that represented Bieber. Almost instantly, top-tier industry outlets like Page Six went on the record with leaked insider confirmations that Bieber and BTS were actively working on a massive joint single, taking their time to carefully construct a track designed to completely rewrite global streaming records. Bieber himself had established deep public admiration for the group, even narrating an E! News segment praising their historic chart boundaries, while BTS members, especially Jungkook, had consistently cited Bieber as a primary musical influence throughout their careers. The creative alignment was seamless, backed by unparalleled financial and administrative machinery. However, the entire monumental project collapsed before a release date could even be finalized due to an unyielding sequence of personal and administrative emergencies. First, Bieber was hit with a severe, sudden medical crisis in June 2022 when he was diagnosed with Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that completely paralyzed half of his face and legally forced him to indefinitely freeze his massive Justice World Tour to focus heavily on long-term physical rehabilitation. Concurrently, on exactly the same timeline in June 2022, BTS shocked the global financial markets by officially announcing a scheduled pause in full group music activities to allow all 7 members to complete their 18 months of mandatory South Korean military service. This massive, double-sided freeze created an impenetrable wall where aligning studio sessions, promotional schedules, and music video shoots became a mathematical impossibility. By the time the dust settled and the members completed their military duties by June 2025, the highly strategic corporate window for the Braun-brokered mega single had completely shut down, leaving the master files completely abandoned in a vault. It stands as a clinical, documentable reminder of how a historic multi-million-dollar corporate alliance can be completely dismantled by the unpredictable realities of human health and geopolitical law. Turn the page, because the final number 1 spot on this list belongs to an absolute music industry monarch whose planned vocal feature was completely erased by an intense, unforgiving battle over artistic control. Number 1. The Sovereign Standoff, Ariana Grande. The absolute pinnacle of unfulfilled pop history belongs to the long-rumored, highly confidential studio union between Ariana Grande and BTS, an international mega collaboration that was actively moving behind the scenes but completely choked out by an unyielding battle over artistic autonomy, distinct label politics, and the sheer momentum of separate career peaks. The foundation for this generational crossover was laid down in a series of highly publicized, explosive public interactions that practically drove global streaming networks to a standstill. The initial spark occurred backstage at the 2019 Grammy Awards rehearsals, where Grande explicitly shared an intimate photograph alongside the septet, causing an absolute media frenzy. Jungkook later attended Grande's Sweetener World Tour concert in Los Angeles, publicly showcasing his physical ticket and expressing that his entire vocal approach was deeply revolutionized by watching her live performance boundaries. Grande reciprocated the massive praise, officially stating that she was completely obsessed with what the South Korean group was doing on a structural and performance level. By late 2020, during the intense studio tracking phases for both BTS's B album and Grande's Positions era, high-level production networks and creative executives from Republic Records and Big Hit Music were actively exchanging raw demo structures for a monumental, R&B-infused vocal ballad designed to serve as the ultimate cross-cultural pop moment. However, the entire master plan hit an absolute, immovable concrete wall during the final executive negotiation stages due to conflicting legal frameworks regarding artistic control and release formatting. Sources within the production circles revealed that both management camps were fiercely guarding their respective independent release windows and streaming optics. Grande's team was navigating a deeply personalized, intimate R&B rollout, while BTS was entering an era dominated by high-energy, English-language stadium pop anthems. This fundamental friction over the track's sonic direction, combined with severe logistical bottlenecks created by conflicting international time zones and the sudden disruption of global travel corridors, made a physical, face-to-face studio locking session completely impossible. Rather than diluting their highly structured individual brand rollouts or compromising on the final audio mix, executive-level negotiators ultimately chose to completely freeze the tracking files, permanently shelving what would have been the most massive, record-breaking vocal alliance in modern pop history. It stands as an undeniable, documentable truth that even when two of the absolute largest musical forces on earth share an authentic, mutual desire to create art together, the unforgiving and rigid machinery of corporate music sovereignty can completely erase a masterpiece before it ever hits a streaming platform.